You don't remember being born. Nobody does. But for most of human history, the moment you arrived, you were placed directly onto your mother's skin, and you stayed there. Not for an hour, not for a day, for months. This wasn't sentimentality. This was survival. For roughly 300,000 years, the way humans raised their young was nothing like what you see today. No cribs, no scheduled feedings, no separate bedrooms, no toys designed by child development experts. And yet the children who grew up in those conditions became the most adaptable, resilient, socially skilled humans who ever lived. They had to. What childhood was like for your ancestors isn't a story about hardship alone. It's a story about what children are actually built for and how far modern life has drifted from that design. Let's go back to the beginning. The moment a hunter-gatherer infant entered the world, it entered a community. Anthropologist Sarah Blaffer Hrdy, whose decades of research on cooperative breeding transformed how scientists think about human evolution, argues that humans are what she calls cooperative breeders. Unlike most primates, where a mother raises offspring largely alone, human infants evolved to be raised by many caregivers at once: grandmothers, aunts, older siblings, unrelated adults who felt a pull toward the baby simply because they were part of the same band. Hrdy calls these helpers alloparents, and the data she collected across dozens of forager societies shows the same pattern everywhere. A child in a hunter-gatherer group was never the sole responsibility of its mother. The mother needed to move, to forage, to survive. So the village, the real village, not the metaphorical one, raised the child. This had a profound effect on the child's brain, because an infant who is passed between multiple caregivers must quickly learn to read faces, to understand what each person wants, to figure out who is safe, who is attentive, who is distracted. Hrdy believes this is one of the core reasons humans evolved such extraordinary social intelligence. The pressure to read the room started at birth. Now picture a camp somewhere in East Africa, roughly 50,000 years ago. The fire is low. It's early morning. A woman lifts her infant from the sleeping mat. They have slept curled together all night, as they will every night for the next 2 or 3 years. The baby has never slept alone. In most documented forager societies, solitary infant sleep was not just unusual, it was unthinkable. The Hadza of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations studied extensively by researchers, including Frank Marlowe, show that infants are in physical contact with another person for roughly 90% of daylight hours. Breastfeeding continued far longer than modern norms suggest. The average weaning age across forager populations falls between 2.5 and 4 years old. Not weeks, years. This wasn't just nutrition, it was also contraception. The physiological suppression of ovulation during sustained nursing naturally spaced births 3 to 4 years apart. Your ancestors didn't plan family size the way you do. The body planned it. Those birth intervals had a downstream effect on how children were treated. Because a new sibling wouldn't arrive for years, each child received sustained, intensive attention during its earliest window of development. There was time, there was presence, and crucially, there was almost no concept of age-segregated childhood. In a forager band of 20 to 50 people, there were not enough same-age peers to form the classroom groupings modern children take for granted. Instead, children played in mixed-age groups, a 4-year-old alongside a 12-year-old alongside a teenager. Research by developmental psychologist David Lancy, who spent his career documenting childhood across non-Western and forager societies, found that this mixed-age play structure produced something remarkable. Younger children learned almost entirely by observation and imitation rather than direct instruction. Nobody sat a 6-year-old down and explained how to nap flint. The 6-year-old watched, tried, failed, watched more. Adults rarely corrected children directly. In many forager cultures, Lancy notes, unsolicited instruction was actually considered socially inappropriate, a form of disrespect toward a child's autonomy. Children were trusted to figure things out through play. And play, for ancient children, was not a break from learning. It was the learning. Archaeological evidence supports this. At Blombos Cave in South Africa, one of the most significant prehistoric sites ever excavated, researchers have found ochre crayons and shell beads dating back nearly 100,000 years, some of the earliest evidence of symbolic thinking in the human record. Among the artifacts recovered are objects that appear to have been handled by small hands. Children were not excluded from creative and cognitive life. They were immersed in it. By around 5 or 6 years old, children in forager societies began contributing meaningfully to camp life, not as labor in the exploitative sense, but as genuinely useful participants. Girls gathered small shellfish and berries. Boys learned to track animals, starting with insects and lizards before moving to larger game. The Aka pygmies of Central Africa, studied extensively by Barry Hewlett, are famous for how actively fathers participated in infant care. Aka fathers hold their infants for roughly 22% of daylight hours, the highest recorded rate of any human society. In Aka camps, small children moved freely between adults, absorbing skill through proximity and practice. There was no concept of school readiness. There was no concept of school. What your ancestors had instead was something developmental scientists now call intent participation. Children present in and gradually absorbed into the full fabric of adult life. The emotional architecture of this childhood was also radically different from what you might expect. Fear, for an ancient child, was real and immediate. Predators existed, disease existed, famine existed. Children who survived to adulthood had watched people die, sometimes violently, sometimes slowly. Grief was not hidden from children. It happened in the open, around the fire, in the arms of the same adults who were also laughing and telling stories the next morning. Children developed what psychologists call emotional regulation, not through therapy or carefully managed exposure, but through being present in the full emotional range of human life, surrounded by people they trusted. What this produced was not a traumatized generation. What it produced, across the archaeological and ethnographic record, is children who were extraordinarily adaptable. Children who could read social hierarchies with precision. Children who had developed fine motor skills through years of unsupervised tool use and play. Children who understood death and community and the relationship between effort and outcome, long before they were adults. Peter Gray, a psychologist at Boston College who has spent decades studying the relationship between play and human development, argues that the suppression of free, mixed-age play in modern childhood is one of the most significant, unacknowledged drivers of the anxiety and depression epidemic among young people today. Children are built, neurologically, evolutionarily, for the kind of learning that comes from unstructured, unsupervised engagement with the world and with each other. When that is removed and replaced with adult-directed, age-segregated, performance-evaluated environments, something breaks. That is not a sentimental argument for going back. It is an empirical observation about what your brain was designed to do before it was 6 years old. Your ancestors did not know about attachment theory. They did not read parenting books. They did not debate screen time or optimal nap schedules. They did what humans had always done. They kept the infant close. They let the child move freely through the world. They trusted the community to share the weight, and they let play do what play had always done. You don't remember being born, but your body still carries the architecture of that first world. The need to be held, the instinct to watch and imitate before you act. The pull toward other people, especially in the dark. None of that is weakness. It was the original design, and for 300,000 years, it worked.